the trial goes on, Capone, so convinced that he was going to be found not guilty, hired a drunk as a lawyer, paid him $100. That's how convinced Al Capone was that he was going to be found not guilty. Well, the trial finally gets to the jury. You know, Michael Jackson had his fans, all these guys, thousands out on the streets in Chicago, waiting for the verdict. Well, to Capone's surprise, the jury comes back and says, Al Capone is guilty of income tax evasion on 3 counts. Guilty on filing false income tax returns on 2 counts. Capone is given 10 years in federal prison, 1 year in Chicago Cook County Jail, and in all honesty, if Capone had any kind of a lawyer, no way would he have ever been convicted because the charges were really pretty poor. But never even appealed it, accepted it, because he spent $100 on a lawyer, or he would spend thousands on other kind of stuff. That's how Al Capone always thought that nobody would ever get him. But the government gets him. And he's sent to Atlanta Federal Penitentiary. The jury convicts Capone, and every newspaper had that headline. And what's fascinating, the worship of Al Capone puts the other news of the day below the news of Al Capone being convicted. The other news of the day, Thomas Edison dies in sleep. But Al Capone getting convicted is more important than Thomas Edison dying. Capone is sent to Atlanta. He gets to Atlanta, and he has all the same things as he had in Philadelphia. And that was an embarrassment to the federal government, especially J. Edgar Hoover, the new head of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. When the Army was going to close Alcatraz as a military prison, Hoover jumped at the opportunity for maximum security, no-nonsense prison, that he could be the boss. And he took it over, and it opened in August 1934. 35 men were left here from the Army. 52 more men came out, leaving Atlanta August 18, 1934. Al Capone was one of those on a specially built steel train, shackled man to man, in top secret. Not a soul knew, other than the people in Atlanta and the prison warden in this prison knew that Al Capone was on the way to Atlanta to prevent him from getting broken out. When the train gets to Oakland, California, August 22nd, 1934, since nobody knew about it, and it was top secret, nobody can figure out what 887 reporters were doing at the Oakland train. Nobody can understand. What were they doing there? But the train didn't stop. It kept going around the bay to Tiburon. The government had a barge there. They put a track on it. They pushed the 3 rail cars onto the barge, floated the barge to Alcatraz. And on August 22nd, 1934, by train, Al Capone arrives at Alcatraz. He didn't come by boat like you. He came by train. Now, Warden Johnson was the first warden. He met all the new people. He called them new fish. Al Capone's turn, gets to see Warden Johnson, has a list. This is what I need for myself. Here are the visitors I want. Johnson replies, you get food, you get clothing, shelter, medical care, work and writing letters are a privilege, no commissary, nothing to buy, you don't need money, put it away. Visitors 2 a month, once a month for 90 minutes each. 2 letters if I say okay a month. And Al Capone would argue back and forth. Finally, you may have seen the banners on the document here, where Al Capone finally says, Warden, I guess Alcatraz has me licked. Knew he couldn't buy his way out of anything here. Decided the only way he was going to get out of prison is to be good. Good time back then meant you did a good day, you got a day off the sentence. So Al Capone decided to become the good Al Capone, comes to Alcatraz. The other men couldn't believe that Al Capone was here. Thought of him as a hero, but that changed really quick. Al Capone, within his first 5 months on this island, became hated by almost every inmate on this island because Al Capone thought only of Al Capone. And all Al Capone wanted to do was get out of here. And his first job he earned on this island was out in the old prison laundry. And Fort McDowell, over there on Angel Island, would send all the Army's laundry over here. And they would wash it out in the prison laundry. Soldiers would write letters. Dear Mom and Dad, I heard Al Capone washed my underwear. I'm never cleaning it again. Send me new stuff. And there's all the National Archives. They were so excited that Al Capone washed his laundry. But there was so much laundry out there that the other inmates decided to go on strike. Capone knew if he went on strike, he'd lose his good time. You lost your good time, you went on strike, got into a fight with a guard, tried to escape, had a weapon. having a fight with another inmate, you wouldn't lose good time, you just lose privilege. Capone refused to join the strike. And the other prisoners got on him. They couldn't believe that he wouldn't join in, and they beat him up. I mean, they got on him. The guards broke up a fight, and for that, Al Capone gets 9 days in solitary confinement for fighting. While he was here, he served 4 stays in solitary. 2 9 days for fighting, 2 4 days for talking, because until 1939, there was no talking in this prison. Only on the rec yard, otherwise you couldn't talk without the permission of a guard. So he served 4 terms. His second job was working in the library, delivering books. It was there while working in the library, Al Capone, who liked music, would take some music books. He taught himself how to read and write music. Out in the woodworking shop, he built a musical instrument called a mandolin banjo. He went to the warden. He wanted to start a band on Alcatraz. The warden said, "You can't buy instruments for the other inmates." Capone said, "How about if I lend them to the other inmates?" For whatever reason, Warden Johnson okayed that. And Al Capone started the Alcatraz Band in 1934, which lasted until the day this prison closed. And they would practice downstairs. You'll see a room that had some Native American art in it. That was the old band room. That's where the men would practice. On holidays like Christmas, right out that door in the area called Times Square, they would play for the inmates. By the way, Times Square, the big clock, Michigan Avenue, named after the main street of Chicago, was Al Capone's first cell, was on the second tier, cell 181. I put a little white card there. Broadway, wide and bright. CD Street, C block, D block. They spelled it S-E-E-D-Y, CD Street. So Al Capone washed clothes, started a band, worked in the library. Then he worked down in the shower room, sweeping the floor. Down there, one day sweeping the floor in 1935, Jimmy Lucas getting a haircut. He sees Capone. He was told that Capone told the warden about a food strike and turned Lucas in. Lucas didn't like Capone. He grabs the scissors from the barbershop, sneaks up behind Al Capone, stabs him in the back. Capone whirls around in self-defense. The fight is broken up. The scissor breaks off in Al Capone's thumb. Rushed up to the doctor. Superficial wounds. He's sewn up, kept up there 4 days, back to the cell. So 3 jobs, a band, a staffing, not like we've gone through a year and a half. We're really zipping along. Towards the end of 1935, Al Capone walks out of his cell on a Saturday in his Sunday uniform. The guards were upset. "Al, why are you in your Sunday uniform?" Al Capone was confused. Didn't know where he was. Couldn't think of anything. He said, "Al, why don't you go to your cell and rest and we'll bring you some tea." Al Capone turns around, pacing his cell, didn't know it was his cell. Now the guards are getting nervous. They take Al Capone up to the hospital. On duty that day was Dr. Milton Beecher, a United States public health doctor. Looks at Al Capone's medical records, sees that when Al Capone was about 19 years old, he contracted a disease which he was treated for very minorly. Al Capone thought all the disease left him because he had no more symptoms. The name of the disease that Al Capone contracted in about 1918 was syphilis. And Al Capone's syphilis finally caught up with him. So Al Capone now was losing his mind. And Al Capone was given a Wasserman test to see where the syphilis had progressed. Milton Beecher determined that Al Capone had tertiary syphilis of the brain, a fatal disease. And for 3 of his 4.5 years on this island, the mighty Al Capone, called the most prominent gangster in history, sat up in the hospital, making his bed 800 times a day, singing arias in the middle of the night, or banging his head into the wall until he bled. And that's what he did after. For 3 of his 4.5 years on this island, that's what Al Capone did on Alcatraz Island. He was no boss, he was no king, he was nobody. He was out here. Prisoners hated him. But the public, they loved him. And you can tell that by some of the letters written to this prison. Letters like a lady from Topeka, Kansas. All these letters Capone would never get to see because there was no reason to give it to him. They thought this was a code. The lady from Topeka, Kansas says, "Dear Warden, I wonder how much Al Capone uses, how much toilet paper he uses every week. I keep a scrapbook of everything I want. I'm just curious, does he use a lot of toilet paper?" Duke of Windsor writes a letter. He sends in the letter along with a beautiful piece wrapped up in an envelope of beautiful linen paper. And he says, "Dear Warden of Alcatraz, please, on the back of this piece of paper, I would like your autograph as I collect autographs of famous people." In the other piece of paper enclosed, please have Al Capone send me his too. His mother writes a letter, how do you expect me to visit my son in Alcatraz? It's a prison in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and I can't swim.